On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, are the Oklahoma City Thunder targeting Patrick Williams? And your mailbag questions.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and inside the Thunder beat writer, Sports Illustrated Thunder beat writer, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO ThunderPod. You can find me at Sports Illustrated. You can find me right here every single day. Subscribe, like, review, anywhere you get your podcast from, and so much more. So on today's show, we're diving into your mailbag questions. We've pushed Mailbag Monday to a Wednesday, frankly, because I make the rules a little bit around here, but secondarily because, and more prominently, I should say, because we had the opportunity to have two really great guests earlier this week. Monday, Richard Stamen at Mavs Draft on Twitter. We talked about every single big man in this draft, including Zach Edey ad nauseum, plus all your other draft questions on Monday. Tuesday, we had Joel Lorenzi, Oklahoman beat writer, to talk about the Thunder season and set the table for the offseason. Now we're back for Mailbag Monday on a Wednesday. The rare Mailbag Monday on a Wednesday. The good news is we are closer now to a Mailbag Monday than we ever have been until 2 minutes from now, whenever we're even closer. So you're going to get another Mailbag Monday on actual Monday next week. And next week, you're also going to get more great guests, including Derek Parker, who just dropped a very interesting mock draft on Twitter, on YouTube, I should say. Derek Parker on YouTube, where he had Deron Holmes going to OKC. Spoiler alert, should have said that at the beginning, but go watch that and see why he has the Dayton Flyer flying up the NBA draft boards. But I want to start out by discussing the report from Darnell Mayberry of The Athletic, where he mentions that Oklahoma City, is a real player for Patrick Williams. So the Chicago Bulls are in this kind of interesting, mix in the offseason. So no one believes that the Chicago Bulls can reach, contender status. Also, no one believes that the Chicago Bulls are going to tank, even though their first-round pick is top 10 protected in a really good draft. But they also have really a perplexing cap situation where they're having to, work around DeRozan and Levine and what can they do? What can that lead to? One of the things that it could lead to would be Patrick Williams, who is a restricted free agent, not returning. And so Mayberry reports that if the Bulls have seen enough of the Williams experiment, one team that has great interest, a league source said, is Oklahoma City. The Thunder need more size, and they have an army of draft picks that can sweeten the pot for the Bulls in a sign-and trade in July. That's very interesting because a sign-and trade would trigger the hard cap for the Thunder at the first apron. I reached out to our good friend Keith Smith, who we've had on the show before, looking to have him on again as the offseason progresses before free agency, as the Thunder have top 5 in the league cap space. Does it still mean a hard cap as the sign-and trade is initiated? Yes, it does, from Keith Smith. So that's where you might try to see the Thunder, if they were to pursue Williams, throw a massive deal at him because they have the cap space too, and just not have the Bulls match it, or put a number on it that the Bulls just cannot match based on the salary cap situation that they find themselves in. I think that ultimately this is an interesting report if you want to read into it. Now, look, Darnell, a very reputable reporter, works for a great place in The Athletic, and spent time in OKC both prior to this year. Of course, his history with the Oklahoman and such, but also this year was boots on the ground in the playoffs. So, it is, fathomable that he's able to get this information about Oklahoma City. The thing I would read into this might have less to do with Patrick Williams and more to do with, this is the first true report where definitive words are said. Because other reports have been, well, the Thunder could engage in talks with Kyle Kuzma, or the Thunder could go do, this move over here, or the executives think that they might, right? Like that's all speculative. That's no different than you or I discussing moves that Sam Presti could make. But this, when you put great interest in there and definitively say that the Thunder are one team that has great interest in Patrick Williams, it does give a signal, one, of how they evaluate Patrick Williams a little bit, but also of what we talked about with Joel on Tuesday. That the Thunder, for as much as we speculate and talk and discuss, are they going to be aggressive? Are they going to go make moves? The Thunder have prepared for rain, right? Like, they've done everything necessary. They've gone out and prepped everything. They have 4 open roster spots. They have top 5 in the league cap space. They have a mountain of draft picks. All they're looking for now is that rain cloud. They're looking for something to materialize, something to come to be where they can make a move. And so this report at least should be a huge indicator that you can stop wondering if the Thunder are going to make a move, or wondering if the Thunder want to make a move or want to be aggressive, and start to say they are going to try to be aggressive, but will something arise? Will an opportunity present itself to go do something? Because the Thunder can't just force a player to want to sign in Oklahoma City. They can't just force a team to want to move on from one of their players and make a trade. However, they do have a perfect storm, no pun intended, of assets, foundational core, sweeteners, and opportunity cost of, you're still a few years away from those extensions kicking in, even though you're going to sign them next summer. They won't kick in for a little bit. You are a 57-win team in a tough conference, but also in an era where we're seeing the most league parity we've seen. So they can make something happen this summer. Now, is it going to be Patrick Williams specifically? I think that is where I pause. Because independent of the whole sign and trade hard cap, Keith Smith was also very reassuring that, like, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for the Thunder to be triggered at a hard cap first apron, after this sign and trade. Obviously, you would ask yourself, would you want to handcuff yourself even a little bit for Patrick Williams? The problem comes that Patrick Williams, he does provide that size that Mailbag reports that the Thunder, of course, want and need. He's 6'7", 215 with a 7-foot wingspan. He would instantly fit into the Thunder's power forward spot. Instantly, he makes you a better defensive team for a team that was already a top 5 defense. Because when you throw a lineup out there of Shea, Dort, J-Dub, Patrick Williams, and Chet Holmgren, that would be absolutely devastating to teams. No doubt about it. No questions asked. That would be the best defense in the NBA. Because after that starting 5, you're bringing in Cason Wallace, you're bringing in Aaron Wiggins, you're bringing in a pesky Isaiah Joe, you're bringing in all these guys, right? So that would instantly be the best defense in basketball on paper, if healthy. That's our first question. Can Patrick Williams stay healthy? I think it's ultimately unfair to hold the health issue against him yet, right? Because he does have 2 seasons of playing really, high level games, like 72 and 82 games. So he's also had 2 seasons where he doesn't play a ton. So which way do you want to look at that equation? And ultimately, a lot of injuries are just like pure bad luck. So it's tough to hold that against him. He's still only 22 years old. But here's the thing. While the defense would be devastating in a good way for the Thunder, he is not a good rebounder at all for his size. What you're going to have to do when you talk about Patrick Williams is you're going to have to bank on uncertainty. Now, we're going to talk coming up about what that uncertainty is. But as we go into this break, ask yourself, with this many assets and with this good of a team already, do you want to bank on uncertainty? That's a real question that this Thunder team and this Thunder fan base and whoever else wants to take part in observing, this Thunder core has to ask themselves. So do that right now. And coming up, we'll tell you what that uncertainty is around Patrick Williams. But first one's here right now. But our good friends over at BetterHelp. Check out BetterHelp. Go there right now, because right now it's a perfect time. We all have moments where we need to get things off of our chest. And at least for me, I've always, my whole life really, felt that I could benefit from therapy, but I've never brought myself to it, because there's always an excuse. I'm too busy today. I don't know even where to go. I don't have time to get in the car and go to an actual therapist's office. It's awkward, whatever. Those are all crutch excuses that a lot of us use. What BetterHelp does is that they give you every single tool you could need. The licensed therapist is there for you entirely online, entirely suited around your schedule. And how you work it is you go to BetterHelp, you fill out this questionnaire, and then they match you with the therapist. However, you're not stuck with that. Like, if that's not the right fit for you, therapist-wise, you can keep retrying until you find one that clicks with you. Once you find that click, away you go, entirely online, entirely around your schedule, and you get those benefits from therapy and from BetterHelp. So check it out today at BetterHelp right now. BetterHelp.com/LockedInNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedInNBA for 10% off of your first month. So go get the benefits of therapy online at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Folks, we've got a lot of stuff coming for you. We've already had a lot of fun stuff this week. Number one, this is a fun podcast talking about possible targets and trades and draft picks and everything else. We talked with Joel Lorenzi for 40 minutes yesterday, which is a longer pod than we're supposed to have, but a lot of good conversations came from it. And then Richard Stamen on Monday talking all about the draft, including some of your favorite targets like a Zach Edey, like a Kyle Filipowski, like a Tyler Smith, et cetera, et cetera. Let's continue talking about Patrick Williams. So what is that uncertainty that you're having to bank on? So we've discussed he's a lethal, unbelievable defender, especially when you put him in this environment. There's questions about his health, but I don't personally, hold that against him personally, because frankly, we just don't know, right? Like, if he never gets healthy again, then we look back in retrospect and say this is a stupid conversation. If he does get hurt, then we instantly say that we're right. And either way, we're not right or wrong. So another example would be like Chet Holmgren. The second he got hurt last year, everybody jumped to see injury prone. Told you. Then he goes and plays 82 games. And if he never gets hurt again, no one will circle back and say, oh, I was wrong about that. I was wrong that he was an injury risk. But if he gets hurt again this year, God forbid, then people will go back to see I was right. So the injury stuff, we just don't know. We don't know. It's uncontrollable. It is not even something you can ever predict. It's just stupid to talk about, frankly. So I don't hold the medical stuff against Patrick Williams. He is still only 22 years old. So he has room to grow and develop. He's younger than J-Dub. Chicago has been an awful place of development and an awful scheme for development. And so that's what you're banking on. You're banking on, okay, he's a bad rebounder, but he plays next to Vucevic and he plays in the system that's not advantageous to getting rebounds. Whereas without that vacuum cleaner on the glass, do you see those numbers naturally rise? Okay. Pick your slot there, like if you agree with that he will or won't get better on the glass. He is a fantastic three-point shooter on very low volume. So is that low volume a product of the Bulls' offensive system, which is a total mess, and it's not getting him those chances? And do you project that he'll have those chances in Oklahoma City? Absolutely. The Thunder will make his life so much easier when you're discussing his offensive production, because while he can't do much else than sit in the corner and kind of hang out around the perimeter and knock down shots, that's all he really needs to do in Oklahoma City. But the big kicker is, while he's an excellent defender, while he's an excellent three-point shooter and projects to be from free throw percentage to the look of a shot to the production from the three-point line. He projects to be an even better three-point shooter somewhere else that gets him more opportunities. The kicker here is he does not do well with the ball in his hands, which is a typical Thunder vehicle of what they look for. He cannot convert at the rim. He is not aggressive. He can't get to the free throw line because of his lack of aggression. He can't convert at the rim through contact because of lack of aggression. He, despite his size, is a player that finishes at the rim at a 51% clip. That is very concerning. The 37% catch and shoot number is great. The 45% shooting off the dribble is really good. Shooting at the rim at a 51% clip is unacceptable. But again, do you bank on that improving when you don't have Vucevic down there, when you get defended differently in Oklahoma City than you get defended whenever you're playing with Chicago, because you have to respect more players, and then he instantly becomes way down the totem pole of players who you respect offensively on the court. Not a slight to him, but like you're obviously going to give more attention to a Shea, to a J-Dub, to a Chet. He has not been a very efficient cutter with the Bulls, but the lanes and the creases are so much more obvious in Oklahoma City that you could bank on that getting better. But do you see how we keep saying if he redefines himself as a player, then he will be the perfect fit for the Thunder. If he does not redefine himself for the Thunder, you are just shuffling chairs on the Titanic. That was a strong analogy, but in the sense of he doesn't help your rebounding issues. He shoots really good percentage from three, but he does not take a ton of them. And he's a devastating defender. So like it's not as like dire as that, but at that point you have a lot of guys who are good defenders and can shoot good on low volume. Now, being able to switch 1 through 5 is lethal. So the bottom line here for what we just laid out with Patrick Williams, I do think he would help the Thunder tremendously defensively. I think that he'd be an improvement and an upgrade. And at this stage where the Thunder are at, when you're looking at a team who should be contending for the next half decade plus, you've got to make business decisions of like, you might like a certain player on this roster more emotionally attached to them, more invested in them, whatever. But it's a shrewd business at the end of the day, and you've got to continuously improve this roster, even if it's not a perfect improvement, but it is still an uptick. Patrick Williams would at least be an uptick. Now, is he worth the mechanisms that you'd have to use to go get him? Because you're either going to have to throw a massive contract at him that the Bulls cannot match, or not only sign him, give away an asset in the sign-in trade, which is not going to be a massive asset as historically we've seen sign-in trades not net a ton, but still it's something, and it would trigger that hard cap first apron. That's just a ton of ifs and like a ton of unknown, and it just does not feel like that would be maximizing the potential and the possibilities. Now, maybe we get to, free agency, and this is the best you can do. Because everything we just laid out, the benefit to Patrick Williams would be he's still 22 years old, and he on paper should be able to accomplish all of that. On paper, a guy this size should be able to finish at the rim at a higher clip. A guy this size should be a better cutter with better help around him. A guy this size, this guy that's been shooting the ball this well, throughout his career as a basketball player, but especially in the NBA, the guy who's been shooting the ball this well should be able to shoot, continually well on a higher percent, on higher opportunities and cleaner looks from three that OKC can provide him. So if he can do those three things, then you don't really care that he can't, play make with the ball in his hands. Like you don't need everyone to be doing that. It's a huge benefit, and it's something that the Thunder truly seek out, is like guys who can play with the ball in their hands. But it's not exactly a prerequisite to be playing basketball. You can still be a really good basketball player without doing that. The biggest thing would be the rebounding issue. Because if he just rebounded the ball better, if he was just willing to put his body on guys and get physical and rebound the ball, then he would become the perfect fit for the Thunder. By just making that change. You could live with the rim stuff. You could live with the playmaking issues. You could live with it if he could rebound the ball better because of what he elevates you defensively and because of what he does for you as a 3-point shooter to space the floor. He'd be really good. So then you ask yourself again, how much of that rebounding issue is Vucevic? So you can see how like you can view this singular move any which way you want to, and you'd be banking on a ton of what ifs. Is the banking on what ifs the best you can do with all the resources that you have? Maybe it is. But you can see the vision for why the Thunder would like Patrick Williams. And I think that if they did make this move, every question mark flies out the window. And this show, every show you listen to about the Thunder, everything you read about the Thunder, everything you consume about the Thunder would swing into, oh my gosh, Patrick Williams is going to have his career take off in Oklahoma City. Because the only thing that he doesn't really do that's like Thunder is he doesn't play with the ball very well. Everything else, it's going to be fun if it happened. Coming up, let's start your mailbag questions. We'll have to do some more tomorrow because we went long on Patrick Williams. But nonetheless, coming up, let's get through as many questions as we can. But first one's here right now. About our good friends over at FanDuel. We're only 1 day away from the NBA Finals. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with the winning of an $85 bet. That's $150 from the spread, money line, player props, and more. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Go there right now to FanDuel. Make sure you use promo code LOCKEDON for $150 for new customers. And as we mentioned, the NBA Finals, they're here. The Mavericks are 6.5-point underdogs in Boston. Jason Kidd finally won a game 1 last series. He's gotten over that hump. He's going to win another one. Game 1, Dallas plus 6.5. I don't know if he's going to win it, but he'll keep it within 2 possessions. So let's go Dallas plus 6.5 on the board at FanDuel.com/lockedon. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. All right, let's take on your questions. 93 Heart 93. Would you be upset if the Suns offered KD to come back in order to replenish the draft cupboards? I mean, upset would not be the right word at all. I think that Kevin Durant would absolutely help this basketball team. Independent of emotion, independent of what's happened in the past, it's hard to separate church and state at that point for most fans. But in terms of just looking at this through the prism of basketball, Kevin Durant absolutely helps the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, do I think it'll happen? You have to. The safe money is always the bet against big moves like that because they so rarely materialize. But it'd be a lot of fun. I would not be upset at all. Also from 93 Heart 93, between Claxton, Valanciunas, Hartenstein, Jared Allen, Steven Adams, etc., who would be the most ideal big man that the Thunder could go after this offseason? Personally, I think Valanciunas for his price tag and skill mix. I would prefer not to have Valanciunas on this roster. We've seen that song and dance play out a few times in the playoffs. Of this list, I would say Jared Allen. I would say Hartenstein, actually, of this list. I really like Hartenstein as a backup big, but that's a premier penny to pay for a backup big. So I do not believe the Thunder team will move Chet off of the center position, nor do I think that they should, as me and Joel talked about yesterday. I don't buy into that. I think that you can shore up and help your front court rotation without, making a massive splash, so to say. At Nick Short, the Thunder have a history of making trades on draft day. Now that the Thunder are competitive again, do you see them making a draft day move again? Why or why not? Big fan, by the way. Thank you, Nick. The draft day trade, I think, is less about what the current roster looks like and more about what the draft board looks like. I think that the Thunder do a good job of separating that in the sense of if a prospect falls, they're going to go get him. If a prospect that they like, the rest of the league is lower on, they're going to move back to do that. Like they've been doing this for a long time, as you mentioned, and consistently. Like they're just going to try to maximize the actual draft. You look at what they did for Baisley, even like that was a point in time where the franchise was at this juxtapositions of what are they going to do? Are they gonna trade Russ? Are they gonna trade Paul George? Are they gonna run it back? Like, it was still in question, but that independent of that, they wanted Bazley. They moved back to get Bazley or vice versa with Brandon Clark and them. And they got Bazley. So like they've been doing this for a long time. Casey Wallace last year, going and getting Usman Jang like to secure J-Dub with that move. So like it's all been to maximize opportunity in the draft. And I think that they'll continue to try to maximize that. Now, is that going to be to move up 2 spots to get Cody Williams? Will that be to move back to gain an asset while getting a contributor? Or will nothing materialize and the best course of action is to stay status quo? Who knows? But if I had to bank on it, I think that you'll see a draft day trade of some capacity only because, like, it's Sam Presti. And they don't have a second-round pick. And it's so easy to get second-round picks that, like, whenever you look at this team, they for sure have a two-way spot open. I'm sorry, Olivier Sarr, like, he got hurt at the worst possible time at the last game of the season after a killer G League season, but he also has no genuine NBA future. So, like, you're at least going to have one two-way spot open. Now, we can discuss how the organization views Flagler and Keontae Johnson, of course, as they drafted Keontae Johnson last year. But if you see a prospect slipping who you'd want to get in unrestricted free agency, you don't have a second-round pick, it's so easy to buy one at the end of the draft. So, like, when you factor that in, when you factor the possibility at this moment of moving up and moving back, like, you would bank on some sort of draft day trade. Because the draft day trade has been riddled throughout this. Like, they moved up to get Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and secure him in the second round. They've consistently done this. So the money would be on, the odds at FanDuel, if they had draft day trades for the Thunder, I would imagine would lean heavily yes for a draft day trade. OKC BR Hoops. Rather than how do you see John Collins as a target? 15 points, 8 rebounds a game with 37% from 3 last season. His contract is not good. It's an understatement, but fits the Thunder's timeline and his value on the trade market is low. Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be a worthwhile gamble. And the reason I say that is, once again, you look at John Collins, like teams have done this before. On paper, he really fits. In practice, maybe something happens again where it does not actually improve your roster the way you think he could, because it happened at 2 different teams now. But the benefit for the Thunder, and why I think that the notion of too many picks is always stupid. That'd be like telling, Bill Gates he has too much money. Like, that's just not a thing. You can use money in so many different ways, the same way you can use draft picks. The benefit for the Thunder is not only do you have the cap space this very moment to go make that trade, but you have the monopoly get out of jail free card. Look at the Mavericks, for example. The Mavericks have supremely less assets than the Thunder do. They're in a whole different tax bracket the wrong way in terms of future assets, but they still were able to be aggressive last offseason, go get Grant Williams, go and try to improve their roster with Rashawn Holmes, and then they were able to pivot in a positive way. Where, like, they went and got Grant Williams, they gave up a first-round pick. They were so confident that Grant Williams was who that they needed. You can go back and listen to Locked On Mavs whenever they went and got Grant Williams, how exciting it was for the Mavericks, system and ecosystem and fan base and everything. It didn't work. It didn't work. And even though they gave up a first-round pick to go get him with supremely less assets than the Thunder, they still could parlay him into a get a Joe free card to go get PJ Washington. So the Thunder have the assets on both ends. 1, to acquire him. 2, to get off of him should it not work, and just run him through that car wash of Oklahoma City. But on paper, John Collins should work. Now, your other question from OKC Thunder BR Hoops, how do you see Kelly Ware as a draft prospect? What you see on film is not the whole story. Like, I think that as a prospect, he greatly improved himself as a player this year at Indiana. The intel's still not great on Khalil Ware, and it would be fairly shocking, to see the Thunder make that move. Obviously, if the Thunder do make that move, they feel pretty good about the intel. But from what we're aware of, it'd be fairly shocking to see this organization make that move. But he's a good prospect on film. I think that you can fall in love with his height and athleticism and kind of miss the boat a little bit on Kelly Ware when it comes to how he fits with the Thunder's roster before you even talk about the intel stuff. So for the Thunder specifically, I would have Kelly Ware very low. And then it just comes down to how much of the intel do you believe. RK Anthony says, have you considered that in a draft that the consensus says is a bad year to have a top pick, that Presti has the resources to go get anyone that he would want to on draft night? So we actually had a long conversation about this with Richard Stamen at Mavs Draft on Twitter on Monday. So you can go listen to that long form conversation. But yeah, I mean, it does make it easier. So we've been saying on this show since 2021, whenever people were gunning to trade up in that draft, and the Thunder gunned as well to go trade up in that draft to try to get Evan Mobley, according to reports. So we've been saying since then, though, that the problem with trading up for draft night is that it's not about overwhelming teams with future picks and having this Godfather offer. It's about, can you give them an asset and still give them their guy? So an example would be last year. You not only gave Dallas, the asset of getting off of Bertans' contract, but you gave them their guy, and you got your guy. That's how draft night trades work. Using Dallas again, the Luka Trae Young swap. Atlanta gets an asset and the guy that they wanted anyway. Dallas gets their guy. That's how draft night trades work. So in a draft that has less consensus, there's a larger potential of teams to want to trade down and teams to be willing to trade down even further than usual because they think that their guy will still be there and they gain from it. So yeah, I mean, technically speaking, I think it should be easier hypothetically to trade up in this draft. The problem is there's someone who you really want to make the leaps and bounds for in this draft. If I had to guess on how the board would shake out if the Thunder were to trade up, I would consider it to be more likely that it's 12 to 10 again. Something like that. Not anything totally dramatic. But on paper, it could be easier because everything you hear is that the boards are completely different and the values of these guys are completely different. So we've gone a long way here talking Patrick Williams and talking about your mailbag questions. We are not going to be done with your mailbag questions, though. We're still going to do them at the top of the show tomorrow to make sure we get through them all before the next Mailbag Monday, including a question from Javi about drafting a big man between Holmes, Ware, who we talked about, and Tyler Smith. What's also on the table is that tomorrow we start our NBA draft profile and projections. We do this every single year, and it's going to be a lot of fun to get into. So we'll start the show with that, and then at the end, we'll round up these questions, finish them off, and then we'll get into another draft profile on Friday. So 2 draft profiles coming your way. It'll be the 2 Duke Blue Devils, Jared McCain and Kyle Filipowski, to close out the week. And then we'll have draft profiles for you nonstop as we lead into the NBA draft. But until next time, be good and be good to one another.